Hi, I'm Scott Losasso.
Hey, I'm David Fabbri. We're two principals here at Losasso Integrated Marketing, B2B marketing agency in Chicago. And today we're going to talk a little bit about how we are leveraging AI in the work that we're doing and some exciting new things that are happening.
Yep, interesting time for sure. What do you want to start with, David?
Well, I kind of want to start with something that is a little different than some of what we're seeing and hearing out there. There's a lot of discussion typically of generative AI around, content and graphics and things, but I know we're looking at and starting to develop a really interesting offering for our B2B clients where we're using AI to enhance leads and make them a lot more valuable. So maybe we start there.
All right. Yeah, one of the challenges for B2Bs is that, everybody wants to do lead generation. Often you're using gated content and high value materials to get people to turn over information. And of course, the fewer fields you require, the easier it is to get people to sort of turn in their data. But also, you don't have much to work with. So we're finding that you can use some tools to take that basic data and then bounce that off a number of different databases to really enrich those low information leads with a lot more information that can help sales.
So like, what are we talking about? Obviously, you want to know who the person is and kind of what their company is and whether it's a viable company, even firmographically. But it seems like there's a lot of even richer data. So what's some of the stuff we're starting to pull in and leverage in these things?
Yeah, so going from just a name and an email, you can often get full title, company, some of the firmographics on the company, obviously, like size, where their headquarters are. You can also look at a little synopsis of that company from their website. If there's an equipment list that they list, you can pull data like that off. So there's a lot, and the more you feed these tools, the more they know about what your offering would be to said company. So, it can even begin to formulate ideas for why they might be reaching out or what their interest might be in a way that just gives the sales team a head start.
Yeah, there's even ways to like sort of tap into LinkedIn posts that the person has done or into industry or company news.
Yep,
so
absolutely.
if they're talking about opening a new facility somewhere and you're selling equipment that would go into that kind of a facility, all of a sudden you've got a real, high value active client potentially,
Yep.
Or prospect, and something to talk to them about when you get them on the phone.
Yeah, the other thing is that we know that most B2B decisions are made with a committee. So if you know the typical titles of the people within your client-side organizations, you can also append it often with additional people within that organization, so you have some reference on that. I think it really is about getting a better sort of understanding of where your opportunities are and if this is a high-quality lead. And then, to your point, if there's something in the news, it might help you understand how ready they are. Because obviously one of the challenges with B2B leads is going from the marketing qualified lead to something that's sales qualified. So we can take several steps down that road to make it easier to really understand if it's a sales qualified lead that's ready for a follow-up.
Yeah. That's one of the things I love about the idea is there's that sort of classic disconnect or friction point between marketing and sales, right? Where marketing's like, hey, we're pulling all these leads together for you, and what are you doing with them? And we're not getting any feedback in terms of the quality or anything else. And you've got sales who are like, yeah, that's great, you're sending me a bunch of leads, but it's an email and a name, and I have no idea if it's any good. And I don't have time for this.
Right. No,
and so all of a sudden you've got, a process that's delivering a higher value, more vetted lead, and you're doing things that make it easier for them to activate on it. So I know one of the other things that we were looking at is this idea of even using AI or generative AI to draft an initial email response to a lead that a sales guy could just go in, sort of see the dossier that's been pulled together, which might include reasons why it seems like a good prospect, and then work that stuff into an initial email that they can, fine tune a little bit and send it off, and they're that much further down the road to making that contact.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of companies that are going a step beyond that as well, and just getting a few pre-scripted emails that actually automatically go out with some customization and response. I think you have to have a pretty high volume and a specific process for follow-up if you're going to automate to that degree, because I think that for a lot of B2Bs, you really want to treat those leads importantly and not do anything that could undermine the relationship with spam or auto emails or the sequential things. I mean, I get tons of that stuff, and it's pretty easy to see what is AI drafted and just blind outreach. And I don't really appreciate that, nor do we really recommend that.
So the other thing that comes to mind for me, Scott, when I hear that, if I'm a marketer and I'm thinking about something like this, is okay, that sounds great, but how is this voodoo magic even happening? And if it really works, it's going to cost me a fortune.
Well, certainly there's some time and effort that goes into it, but the tools are continually evolving, and there's a number of them that can accomplish these. And really, it's not the specific tool that you're using so much as knowing that there are. You think about what happened with email and marketing automation, the proliferation of companies that are offering better and better tools at lower cost. So that's going to happen here as well, and so it's not prohibitively expensive today, and it's only going to get better and probably more efficient as time goes on. You're training tools to follow instructions. Some people use GPT, some people use Gemini, some people use Perplexity. On the table front, there's lots of tools like Casper and Clay and Apollo. And it's a mix of tools that you pull together to create an agent that goes out and gets you information. And then, of course, you're then looking at, okay, how does this factor into our existing process? Yeah. Does it need to go back into Salesforce.com, or does it connect to a client-side database so that it's immediately actionable and permanently available?
Yeah, I do think that's just one of the interesting pieces too. You talk about some of the different tools, and some of them are automation tools, right? So how am I, going out and scraping this information from different places? But then that AI piece that's in there, in terms of taking that information and coming up with some suggestions about, okay, possibly what's going on with this company based on the industry and why this might be an important time for them in relation to what you're selling, is a whole layer of AI that kind of takes that really great data appending process and also adds a layer of initial thinking,
some
which
context,
is cool.
right?
Yeah.
These things aren't always right, but if you can get 50 to 80%, of the way there to a really good sales dossier that gives somebody great background and context to reach out.
Yeah, and you know what? If it's the kind of thing that a person might have come up with on their own, if they had all the information and were thinking about it, at a minimum, it gives them a talking point that they're having a conversation with somebody about, that they might be like, yeah, that's not what's going on with us, but here's what's going on with us. And so it just jump starts that whole thing for them.
Yep. And of course, the other thing that people worry about is privacy, and are you violating someone's interest, or are you able to reach out? And all of those things are situationally dependent, but there's a lot you can do with these things, and you shouldn't get stuck thinking that you can't use them because you're violating some privacy principle, because that's just very often not the case.
Yeah.
You're not pulling proprietary data, you're not violating any GDPR. Of course, you're not going to pull a bunch of stuff and start spamming people, but you're really trying to arm sales with better context in this example.
Yeah.
But anyway,
and again, the whole premise of this is someone who is popped up as a lead, so they've already offered up their email, and their name to you potentially, and so you're just adding information to that.
Right.
That's publicly available.
Yeah.
So the other thing that's been happening at the agency that seems really valuable to me is we've been doing these AI knowledge bases. So maybe you could talk a little bit about kind of what we're doing there and why it seems to be having such a great impact.
So right now we're using this specifically with Chat GPT, and there's you can build, when you have sort of an enterprise or Teams version of that software, what you input does not go into their training database. So you can build custom GPTs for a client or for a subject matter, and not only store what you pull and tell it sort of the perspective that you want it to take on the information that it pulls back, but you can upload data from subject matter expert conversations, phone calls, legacy knowledge that you may have about a client and their industry, so that you're uploading all of this into the GPT, so that when it's answering you or reflecting on questions that you prompt it for, it takes into account the specific conditions and circumstances that you train it to respond with.
Right.
So if you think about that, we've worked forever in these complex B2B industries where we rely deeply on subject matter experts that have, lots of engineering information that we get at different times to support different projects and efforts. Everything that we do that gets smarter and more sort of accurate to the perspective of our client side point of view.
Yeah. I think access to that ongoing information is really huge, because if we have somebody on our team who's a content creator, for instance, a writer who's writing a technical article, and they sit down and talk to a subject matter expert, and it helps drive, a piece of content or a campaign right now, 6 months from now, a year from now, something similar comes up, you've got all that sort of learning and information that's right there at your fingertips in a way that's much more accessible, salient, and immediate than, maybe reconnecting with that subject matter expert or kind of trying to remember the information you had. I think the other thing is...
Or pouring through written documents, which is how we've always done it.
Right. Along that line, even traditional marketing things like personas, buyer's journeys and things, like there's a lot of great information often that gets pulled together that is incorporated into things, but then also it's a paper document or a digital document that's in a folder somewhere, and this keeps it all front and center and integrates it with other stuff.
Yeah.
So, here's the context of, we've got these personas, these targets we're going after, we know this technical information, we've had these 5 phone calls, with our client about kind of what they're trying to do, and we can sort of leverage those pieces of information together in a different way with the right prompts and questions that can be really fruitful.
Yep. So the other thing that I think is happening a lot more now, both from the standpoint of how AI is impacting business, but also how the machine learning and segmenting that's going on across the media platforms, we always want to be targeting the right person at the right time with the right message, right? That sort of has been the mantra for years. But now, if you've got, content that needs to be sort of angled toward a specific target or industry, the ability to version that based on these tools, generative tools, to rewrite something specific to the parameters of a target or a persona that is also within that AI program tool, it really expedites your ability to give very well targeted, personalized, content to people, and not even just personalized down to the, hey David, this article is for you.
No, topically personalized, relevant.
You're
I guess
you're
the
a director of strategy at an agency. This is how this information really impacts you.
Yeah. You mentioned continuity before, and I do think that's important across a marketing team and across an agency too. I mean, in the world we live in, we'd love to have employees that stay with us for 20 years, but there is turnover at times, and to have all that sort of wealth of information available for somebody to get up to speed on it quickly is great. The other thing I love it for is just backgrounders, right? So we're talking to a new prospective client, for instance, and we want to get dialed into that industry quickly. You can spend the time and dig in and do it, but AI will do the heavy lifts and kind of give you some really great, quickly pulled together but very insightful information about an industry and current trends and things that might have taken you 8 hours before, that you can have in 30 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I said to you, whatever it was, 18 months ago when we started really diving into this, that, it's becoming both mind-blowing and unsurprising. The more you work with these tools, the more you realize that there's, they're not always right, but boy, do they do a better job than you expect them to at times.
Yeah. And just anecdotally, we were working on a new business pitch recently, and it was an area that we're familiar with, but not an industry that we had worked in before. And getting ready for this pitch, we were able to really dial in quickly to kind of not only the industry, but who this prospective client was, in a way that let us pull together brief and documents that helped our creative team do spec creative that really, really resonated with that group when they got in here. And I think they were surprised that even said so, this is fantastic considering we haven't really told you anything. Right. And so some of those tools, again, it's just about just having much more information in front of you and ready to apply to these things. Because you do still need the people to take that information and deliver the creative magic,
Yep.
right? But the more they have the insights and the information, the easier it is for them to do.
Right. And it's also just learning how to use those, this notion that like there's this new title that's everybody's talking about as a prompt engineer, right? It's kind of interesting when you really think about what that is. It's somebody who really just knows how to create the right question set to get these things to do the work with a higher degree of accuracy and reliability.
Yeah.
I mean, and of course, also training these things to integrate with other technologies. That's the other thing that we probably don't have time to unpack here, but like, it's kind of frightening when you think about comments being made by people in places like Facebook and at the leading tech, organizations across the world that are saying that, by the end of this year, that the automatic programming will be as good as, 99% of the programmers out there.
Right.
I mean, learning how to engineer and prompt these things to go accomplish a task that, you really have to describe
Right.
in both, a combination probably of language and sort of some code understanding.
Yeah. And I suppose from a strategic perspective is really deciding even what you're trying to accomplish and why, right? And then great, it's easier now to implement it and execute it, and will keep getting easier, but you do still need to be insightful.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's the one thing that has been consistent since we started working together decades ago, is that the fundamentals of like good communication and smart marketing are exactly the same. Just the way we go about it is so fundamentally different.
So I think that's about, probably enough for today, but I would ask you in terms of, how you see AI already affecting sort of the way we're working here in our industry. I mean, what's your prediction for a year from now?
I think that a year from now, the people who are hesitant to let their partners explore and utilize it and leverage it, that phase will be over. Everyone will be leaning into, okay, how do we use this to make our programs, content, targeting better?
Because the people who aren't using it are going to be left behind. Because there's enough people using it effectively. You got to be working with the tools. You got to be.
Yeah, it's like what we've been saying to our team, right? Like this is disruptive. We are either going to be disrupted or disrupting.
Right.
It's unfamiliar. Some people are afraid of it, but the genie's out of the bottle. The train has left the station. Right. Get on board. It's just going to make you better. All right. Well, it was fun, David.
Thanks for your time today, man. Appreciate it. I think there's some exciting stuff happening, and it's going to be really interesting. Fun for us, on the agency side to figure out how to use this most effectively for ourselves and our clients. And
don't be afraid, people. It will make us all better.